Hey guys, it's Ashley.
And I'm Braden.
And we're here with Utah Trikes. And today we're talking about two high-end full suspension trikes. Let's hit the road.
Let's go do it.
Let's go. All right, Braden, we're back on the road.
Test riding some of the more fun trikes. I've been stoked about this.
Today, we've got two trikes that are pretty evenly matched, both in capabilities and price.
We're out here on the Lamborghini and Ferrari today.
Yeah.
The recumbent tadpole seat.
So these are two of our most high-end trikes.
Right.
The price alone is probably gonna scare a lot of riders away. Our base price on both of these trikes is right at $8,500.
Right. Completely stock.
Yeah, that's totally stock, without a motor,
Right.
without any exotic gearing.
Very much not entry-level trikes. These are the pinnacle in my eyes.
Right. I'm starting on the AZUB Ti-Fly, which comes to us from the Czech Republic, and you are on
the Steintrike Wild One.
And that comes to us from Serbia. Two trikes that made quite a trip to get here. You know, these are full suspension trikes.
Oh yeah.
And that's gonna be the big appeal for people that are riding.
You know, we're doing a comparison video about these two, but they do a lot in common.
Well, they're both black.
That's true, and that's the most important thing. You can't change the color on any of these. I'm lying. They're the only trike brands in our lineup that have that cross frame section being the suspension.
Well, most of our other trikes that have suspension, their suspension tends to be built into the spindles.
Right.
Cat Trike, Ice, and then even at the most basic entry level, you've got that Sunseeker, and all of those have suspension that built into the spindle hub mount assembly, a little more limited travel. And then you do have HP Velotechnik with their Scorpion, and they have almost a McPherson strut,
right,
A-arm style with the lower A-arm, and then the dampening and spring built into the hub mount. Both of these trikes have kind of a full width suspension, but they've really taken two different approaches.
Enough talking about the trikes we're not on, right? We do have a pretty heavy duty built A-frame suspension on this Stein.
Yeah.
Two adjustable coilover shocks, which is pretty unique for front suspension, being so easy just to twist and change.
And that is one of the notable differences here on these two trikes, is that the Steintrike allows for adjustment for the weight of the rider,
right, pretty
easily by adjusting the preload, or even if you go with air shock, have a little more dampening there. While the AZUB, it does have shock dampeners, but they do not actually adjust for the weight of the rider.
No.
That's determined by that lower leaf spring,
which is not as easy as twisting or taking air in and out of a shock system.
Changing for the weight of the rider is a somewhat invasive.
Right, a certified AZUB shop's the only people that should be doing it.
The Steintrike does have more suspension travel. You know, over the past few weeks, we've been really pounding that trike off-road. It's really proven itself.
Oh yeah.
I think as a off-road worthy trike. Today, my goal with taking these two trikes out was more to test out the roadworthiness and compare them.
We've talked about it a couple of times in these videos with the Stein, but I feel like I lose a lot of power output in that suspension. And I gotta say, I'm feeling it trying to keep up with you on that AZUB.
And that's one thing that, you know, I really wanna get a feel for today. If I'm getting a high-end trike like this, a lot of times it's my one and only trike. I'm buying one of these trikes because I want a top of the line trike. I want the best trike out there. The suspension on the Steintrike makes it a formidable off-road beast, but you know, if I'm commuting on the road every day and I'm riding on the road, we really want to see kind of how does that hold up.
I gotta tell you, I'm feeling it. I don't know if it's because, you know, we've filmed back to back almost.
Yeah, we've been riding these trikes a lot lately, right?
but I definitely feel this suspension, I think, slowing me down.
One noticeable difference, and there's a lot of noticeable differences about these trikes. You really take the time and you look at these trikes. There's a lot of different engineering ideas happening in both the frame design, the suspension design, the seat design, everything. They're quite different trikes. Right off the bat though, most people are gonna notice that the Ti-Fly X here has got bigger front wheels.
Right, 26-inch all the way around.
Yeah, the Wild One there has 24-inch. So part of it is, you know, we want to see how does that happen to affect our gearing, our climbing ability, how smooth they ride.
Gosh, it's hard for me to talk right now. I got focus getting up this hill.
You know, so right now, the AZUB here is set up with the roll-off 14-speed hub in the back, and I am in my lowest gear, which is fine, you know, because I'm trying not to get too far ahead of you.
It's kicking my butt.
So far though, I feel very comfortable, very smooth ride. We're climbing our hill. I do think that if I was choosing this trike to commute, this roll-off, I would probably want at least one more lower gear. You know, if I was climbing a lot of hills and all I had was the roll-off. All right. Woo! Another hill.
I know I get to the top of it, we gotta take a breather or something. It's kicking my butt.
Another hill climbed. Now we gotta take it a little bit easier, even though we're still climbing.
Going up that hill on my smallest gear, there was nowhere else to go. At least on this one, I could shift up a little bit.
As I was saying, there's a lot of differences on these trikes. The bigger wheels being the most probably noticeable.
Visually speaking, I would argue.
While I'm sitting on the trike though, you can't help but feel the higher seat.
Seat height, we've always talked about it.
I really do like that. You know, if I'm looking for all around commuter trike and I'm dealing with traffic, then I really appreciate having a higher seat like this. The higher seat also comes with significantly higher ground clearance too for an off-road trike.
And that's almost what you want.
I've got a lot of ground clearance on this.
So it's funny you mentioned the wheels being the biggest difference. When you're riding it, how are you feeling about that Dream seat on the AZUB?
The Dream seat here, I really like the cushion on the Dream seat.
Right.
Like it, you know, we have been riding a lot lately off-road and I've been feeling a little beat up. Sitting in this Dream seat right now feels like pure luxury.
Compared to the last few we've been riding on?
I mean, I've got that padding and it's a nice tall seat.
Right.
Like the Stein.
Holding your shoulders, which is what we like.
I do wish that the bottom of the seat was a little longer.
You know, do you think we feel that way because we are taller guys? I feel that way even on this Stein right now. Well, if the bottom just came out a couple more inches.
Yeah, and I commented on that one of the last times we were riding the Steintrikes too, where I felt like I really wish that I had had a little bit longer seat in the front.
Right.
Before we left, I took this seat and I rotated it all the way back. I really can't imagine sitting any more forward on this with the smaller seat. Like I feel like it would almost want to push me out a little bit more.
It's got the same seat problems as it did the day before. I can really feel that laced seat. I don't know if it's that climb on the hill. I would be lying if I said I didn't feel a little beat up.
Well, I'm excited to take both of these down our hill here. I feel like we're going to be limited on both of these with how fast we can go just on the gearing.
Well, this one especially geared more for off-road.
I'm going to do my best to go as fast as I can.
I'm going to try to keep up with you.
Let's go. All right. Okay. This is just buttery smooth, guys. Very nice. I think I have just enough gears to hit a high speed. Yeah, all right.
I'm coming. You know, I do have some interesting opinions.
Yeah, well, I think before we get to that, instead of turning right, I figured let's turn left here.
Let's take them a little off-road here.
Take a little off-road.
I love commenting on the Stein. Every time we get off-road with these, it feels like they just come to life. Well, on-road, I'm fighting tooth and nail with this thing. But here, this couldn't be easier.
So as we're riding here, you know, a little bit of gravel here, and it just feels good. Some potholes, these bigger wheels. You know, I definitely feel like I can go wherever I want to go with this trike here.
This is some pretty, I'd hate to say, quote, light duty off-road.
Yeah.
Where I really don't feel like either of these trikes are gonna suffer on.
No, I think we are gonna note the difference in suspension though.
Right.
Wow, the AZUB suspension, I think, is more than adequate. It's hard to beat the actual suspension travel that you have with the Steintrike when you're going off-road.
You know, some of the problems we've had with other suspension trikes, when you take them off-road, that steering pushes you around. That's not a problem with the Stein.
Yeah.
How are you feeling it on the AZUB?
I think that with the bigger wheels make the bumps a little more noticeable.
You think so?
When I hit a bigger drop on one of the wheels, it does tend to influence the steering a bit more than on the Steintrike. Both of these trikes have fantastic under-seat steering. My hands and the vibrations of the road are isolated from each other.
You're not feeling it as much?
Feels very smooth.
See, I haven't talked about it, but I do think that 24-inch wheels on the Stein were on purpose. I feel like they're aided by off-road use, at least in control. You know, turning never feels too tough. I don't feel like I'm being bullied in any direction.
Sure. The big advantage of these larger 26-inch wheels, that seat height and that ground clearance. Like, I really appreciate being up here and sitting higher, really not having to worry about obstacles that I can straddle.
Coming to the end of this dirt road patch, you want to switch trikes?
Oh yeah, let's give her a switch. Got a little pep in your step today. You gotta do what you can.
God, I'm feeling tired, dude. I don't know if it's the second day out. You know, before we get on this dirt road, I want to talk a little bit about that downhill. I love this suspension. I can't give it enough props for its off-road use. It was hard to maintain a good feel and not feel like I'm being thrown off with that suspension going that higher speed. When you take that first turn, second turn, you can feel it dip. Now I should be saying, I wasn't close to falling over. I'd have to really try to like flip myself on one of these. It was definitely noticeable.
First noticeable difference when you switch from one of these trikes to the other is the seat and the seat height. I do feel like I'm sitting a little bit lower. I'm really appreciating the open mesh. When we were on the road there, that comfort of that pad.
Yeah.
Is really nice on the AZUB. This more breathable mesh just really feels nice and cool.
I'm nothing but smiles here. This is luxury in the seat.
Right off the bat, I'll say that I notice this increased suspension.
Oh yeah.
The ride on the Steintrike feels smoother.
I am getting thrown a little bit more on this AZUB.
Yeah, right? I think that that's kind of a limit of the
titanium front suspension on the AZUB. The rear, I don't have any complaints about.
Right.
You know, my back feels great on both of them. It's that A-frame suspension on the Stein that gives it its edge.
Yeah, for off-road riding, so far, I feel like I really have to give the edge here to the Steintrike. When the wheels dip down and they're hitting the different bumps, it does not seem to influence the steering.
No, I feel it in the steering. I don't know if you hadn't noticed because you weren't on the Stein yet.
I feel like I can just hit the bumps
Yeah, you're not swerving, you're not moving out of the way for nothing.
Yeah, on a gravel, bumpy road like this, both Trikes are great. I would say in terms of smoothness of ride though, the Steintrike does have the edge. A big part of that is the length of travel of these A-arms.
On the Stein, I feel comfortable taking my hand almost off the steering bar. Here I am on the AZUB, and if I go to itch my nose or move my hand, I have to really keep my steering straight.
Right.
With the other one.
Now that you mention that, I feel like I've had a very light touch as we've been riding. All right, so we're back on the road.
I don't feel slowed down on this AZUB at all.
That is something that we have commented where it's hard to actually pinpoint where that's coming from, but we've noticed that on both the Stein models. When you're riding on the road, there's a little bit of power sucking.
It feels like a
going
resistance
from the
almost.
suspension. When you're off-road on these, they just come alive. And when I'm on the road, I feel
a little bogged down.
A little bogged down. Yeah, hard to pinpoint.
No, it makes me feel a little bit better. I felt like I was fighting for my life trying to keep up on the road.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. You know, as I'm pedaling, and I'm sure you notice this too, with every stroke, you can feel the trike dip just a little bit, both in the front and the rear. I'm definitely feeling like the suspension is robbing a little bit of my power. I also think some of that is the more acute angle that the chain is taking on that idler.
Do you think it's the specific chain routing on the Stein?
I don't know. You know, in some ways I'm kind of grasping at straws.
Sure.
To
Like
try to feel what's happening.
What's going on, yeah.
And because it's definitely noticeable.
Say it was different when we were both on the Steins because I think we were both feeling it.
Yeah.
But trying to keep pace with this AZUB.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like more work.
Oh yeah.
Pedaling on the road, which is crazy because as soon as we were in a little off-road section, that went away.
Right, felt great. Well, here we go, my least favorite part of the ride.
All right, so we're climbing our favorite hill right now. So I'm really trying to pay attention to feeling that bouncing.
Are you?
Yeah, I did not feel that with the AZUB. At this point, I'm in my lowest gear.
Oh yeah.
And felt like with the roll off on the AZUB, that lowest gear that I had was quite a bit lower than what I have here. But
I think you might just be in better shape than me.
well, that's probably true, but I do feel like the AZUB climbed that hill better. And I'm sure that you can hear this in our voices, but you know, this is much more of a workout than any non-suspended, you know, trike. Yeah, woo! Oh man. Okay.
In fact, you can't be, just 1 second. Oh shit.
We made it up the hill again. Maybe the cameras weren't working and we got to do it again. Yeah.
We'll just cut, I'll walk it.
It's a crazy difference. You know, when we were first riding, we were talking about suspensions that are on some of these other trikes. If you have a lot of hills, you're mostly doing road riding, and elastomer-based front suspension.
There's not as much power loss.
Yeah, you really don't notice loss like you do here.
At this higher price point, a lot of the trikes we sell, the AZUB, even the Stein, are going to have motors on them.
I wanted to do this comparison today
without motors.
With these two trikes on our road course that we take without motors, because putting motors on these, you know, it really changes everything fundamentally. Now's a good time to thank our friend Bob, who loaned us his AZUB Ti-Fly here. So we're gonna be putting a motor on Bob's Ti-Fly, and at the same time, we're gonna be putting a motor on this Wild One here. Bob said, yeah, use my trike and do your comparison videos. Appreciate that.
Really sweet of him to let us use this Ti-Fly.
You know, as we're riding here, the nice thing about both of these trikes is if you're riding on the road, you can really just get a nice smooth ride.
It is smooth. That little hill right there is the best this Trikes ever felt on the road. And part of that's gearing. You know, to be unfair, I do think I have a higher high end than you do on that one. So for speed.
Yeah, I think the roll-off gearing, as I was pointing out earlier, if it were mine, I might want to switch everything a little bit lower.
I mean, if you were gonna do off-road, we're about to hit this downhill and I'm gonna prefer that.
So I'm really excited about taking this trike down the hill and seeing how it does, seeing how it handles.
I'll see you on the other side.
All right, let's see if. All right, even going downhill, it's a lot more work. A lot more work.
It's sweet.
Yeah, there's Braden coasting, and I'm pedaling hard. Although, hit that bump at the end, that's just smooth. Well,
that made me feel a little better.
You know, we talked about climbing. I think now we got to talk about going down the hills. One thing that I really appreciate here again with the Stein is that increased suspension. I actually veered towards a couple of the big bumps and it just absorbed them. But what I was not expecting, that suspension power drain, even when I was going downhill. You know, we got about halfway down the hill. I think you just stopped pedaling.
I did, I was coasting, I was waiting for you.
And you were coasting. I was in my highest gear. I was giving it everything I had, and I could still feel the suspension sapping my power a little bit. You know, which is not something I was expecting. I was thinking, well, me pedaling and the help of gravity, I should be able to overtake Braden coasting.
Say, I am missing that breathable mesh a little bit.
Yeah.
This dream seat's getting hot. It is a whole lot more comfortable though.
You know, when I started out on the AZUB there, comfort of the seat is immediately noticeable. And I thought, wow, this is great. But now as we're riding and I'm hotter and I'm sweating, I'm really liking this breathable. In our ride last week, we're comparing the Stein Rebel with the CXS. I think the one thing that I came away from that's a change I really want to make is to just put that seat foam
in the bottom
of the Stein seat.
I do think it'd do a lot. It's right at the rear, right in the back of your hip almost.
So I want to talk about the difference of suspension in these two. This is going to be, you know, the big thing for a lot of people.
The biggest takeaway of this video,
The biggest takeaway. If you are dealing with bumpy roads, and I mean bumpy, you know, you've got potholes and you've got
not just the
rough,
normal road cracks.
Right. You know,
we're talking almost back road Utah roads.
Yeah. I think this increased travel of the Steintrike is completely observable. I mean, you can't miss it.
Right.
First time you hit a big bump and you go, oh, I didn't even feel that. Any kind of off-road riding, I think you're gonna appreciate that. But I think where the AZUB suspension really shines is on the road.
Oh yeah, I feel no loss. The cracks that are like, you know, in our path, in our road, while significant on some, are really reduced on the suspension on the AZUB.
Yeah.
I mean, it's perfect.
AZUB's leaf spring design, this is getting a little technical. Let me go back and talk about another trike. Another trike that uses an A-arm design that we already talked about, HP Velotechnic. And they use a lower A-arm. What they do to improve their handling on the road is they have a torsion arm or an anti-sway bar that connects both the lower A-arms, kind of like what you would see in a car, to prevent that kind of dip.
Right.
that you would get when you take a hard corner or you have one wheel goes down or up too far. That's one thing that you'll notice on the Stein here that it does not have.
No, there's nothing preventing one wheel from dipping further than the other.
You know, and that was one thing you commented, you know, taking that S-curve hard, you found that like once you get over a certain point, not only does the one side go down, but then the other side kind of springs up a little bit. If you're not anticipating that.
Well, no, I wasn't expecting it. I mean, my entire center of gravity was thrown off.
You know, on more of a technical aspect, if you look at AZUB's leaf spring design, they have one leaf spring.
It's a solid piece.
You know, well, they have two. They have an upper and a lower, but it's a one piece that goes all the way from the right to the left, but then it has two pivots on it. The really cool thing about that design is it acts like its own built-in sway bar. So when one wheel gets pushed up too far, it has the natural tendency to apply a little bit of lift on the other wheel. And that's something that I really noticed taking the high-speed downhill on the Ti-Fly, was that increased stability.
Well, you know, it's funny you say that. It being a solid piece, it really doesn't allow it to bend too far from the other side.
You know, anytime you take a trike with a lot of suspension like this, that's made more for off-road, and you take it on-road at high speed, you've really got to use some body English. You know, lean into the turns, push the trike down as needed. Kind of goes into the difference of design that these two manufacturers have.
The takeaway I got, I think the AZUB benefits from being on-road. Whereas the Stein benefits more from being off-road. Where they're both manageable and they both did the same job. I preferred this on a solid surface, and I preferred the Stein on a dirt path.
On a rougher,
Dirt, rougher, that suspension travel really benefits from a broken road. Whereas this AZUB, the lack of power loss, everything I put in those pedals, it's going straight through the drivetrain.
All right, guys, we are back at the shop. We did a ride today with these two top-of-the-line full suspension trikes from both AZUB and Steintrikes. I think we came away with some really good takeaways.
Well, you said it yourself, top-of-the-line trikes, they both felt top of the line through and through. You know, on-road, off-road, they both did a really good job. I really don't have huge complaints about either model, just some subtle changes between the two models.
Kind of comes down to, you know, at this price point, at this level, you know, I'm sure that there are people that are gonna go, well, which one's better? Which one's best?
Well, I want to, if I'm gonna spend the money, give me the best one.
There are things about each trike that I like better than the other trike. The simplest way to figure out, you know, is this the best trike for you, really just comes down to what kind of rider are you doing and what kind of riding are you going to be doing. If you're predominantly going to be riding off-road, then the Steintrike has the edge.
I couldn't agree more. And I felt the exact opposite when it came to the AZUB. You know, we take it out on the road and on a flat, solid surface, I think the AZUB has the edge.
We're doing this comparison today without motors. If we put motors on these, it's going to be a totally different comparison. And we are going to be, so watch for that video. We're going to take out
the fault of the rider out. The comparison.
You know, but I think today, if we're just looking at these trikes as pedal-powered vehicles, I'm gonna say it's pretty easy. If I'm going off-road and I'm pedal power only, gonna be on rough trails, I'm gonna choose the Steintrike. But if I'm on the road and I'm climbing and I'm taking fast descents and I'm gonna be riding a lot on the road, then it's definitely the AZUB.
Hands down, I couldn't agree more.
While there is some crossover there, the AZUB, I think, if I'm predominantly on the road and I'm dealing with some gravel roads and dirt roads, I'm probably still gonna go with the AZUB. If I'm going to be taking rocky creeks and anything like that, then I'm probably gonna go with the Stein.
Of course. And all that being said, if you want to stay tuned, we've got more comparisons on both these trikes coming soon. We'll get motors on them. I'm excited to take them back out.
All right, guys. Well, in the meantime, we encourage you to relax, spin fast, and ride trikes, and join us next time. Thanks.
See you guys.
let's hit the road.